This video includes detailed narration and insights, providing a complete picture of the events that led to Goa's statehood. Goa's history was shaped by a series of dynasties, including the Indo-Parthians, Oghuz, Shilahas, Chalukayas, Kadambas, Yadavas, and Bahamanas, from the 1st century BC to 1498 AD. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the Vijayanagara Empire emerged as a powerful force, challenging the established rulers of the region. Yusuf Adil Shah, the founder of the Adilshahi dynasty, ruled Goa from 1498 to 1510 after declaring independence from the Bahmani kingdom. He established his headquarters in Old Goa, Ella, fortifying the city and building mosques. Under his reign, Goa became an integral part of his empire, flourishing as a strategic and cultural hub. Portuguese entry on May 28, 1498, Vasco da Gama arrived in Calicut, Kozhikode, Kerala, after a long voyage around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. This historic event marked the beginning of European colonial influence in India, forever altering the region's history. The failure. In February 1510, Afonso de Albuquerque led an expedition to capture Goa, seizing the port of Ella on March 1. However, by mid-May, the Adilshahi forces retook the island, pushing back the Portuguese. Despite this setback, the Portuguese had already begun establishing their presence and influence in the region. The cruelty. In November 1510, Afonso de Albuquerque launched a second attack on Goa and, after a fierce battle at Ella, defeated the Adilshahi forces, regaining control of Tiswadi Island. The battle was devastating, with thousands of Muslims killed, and Albuquerque infamously boasted about killing those who tried to escape in a letter to the King of Portugal. The first converts. After conquering Goa, Afonso de Albuquerque encouraged mixed marriages between his soldiers and the fair-skinned Muslim Turki women of Goa, who were the widows and daughters of the slain Adilshahi officers from the Battle of Ella. This policy of miscegenation was aimed at creating a loyal Luso-Indian population that would remain faithful to Portuguese rule. Economic exploitation. The Portuguese gained control of the spice trade and introduced the cartaz system, requiring ships to pay a fee for sailing in their waters. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj later challenged this system, resisting Portuguese maritime dominance. Evangelization begins. Portuguese missionaries in Goa, backed by the Padroado Real and papal bulls, used various methods to convert locals to Christianity. Franciscans evangelized in Bades, Dominicans in Tiswadi, and Jesuits in Salsette and parts of Tiswadi. Seeds of Inquisition. Saint Francis Xavier, shocked by the immoral behavior of the Portuguese in Goa, urged King João III to introduce the Holy Office to protect Christianity. However, he didn't anticipate the brutal consequences of the Inquisition, which led to the persecution and death of many native victims. Initial resistance. Goa was the first to resist European domination, with agrarian protests against the Portuguese from 1559 to 1583. In response to the 1559 decrees, the Cariocas halted farming to protest forced conversions, while in the 1570s, Kola villages refused to pay taxes in defiance of the viceroy's religious persecution. The Inquisition, established in 1560 in Old Goa, targeted heresy and led to the destruction of temples and mosques. Many Hindus fled to neighboring areas, and devotees moved their deities to Antras and Ponda for protection. Strangling the culture. The Inquisition enforced harsh laws on Hindus, forbidding them to marry during church-designated periods and prohibiting Hindu marriage ceremonies in Old Goa and nearby islands. Later, Hindu marriages could only occur in private, without priests, rendering them invalid. The atrocities. Under Portuguese rule, many Hindu practices were banned, including the application of sandalwood, kumkum, and tilak. Hindus were also barred from government jobs, and orphans were forced to convert to Christianity. The Inquisition used brutal torture methods, such as water and fire torture, and burning at the stake, instilling widespread fear. Breaking the Brethren. Under Portuguese rule, pork, beef, and pig flesh were dumped in sacred Hindu spaces, such as tanks, wells, and Tulsi Vrindavans, polluting them and causing social ostracism. This forced many Hindus to convert to Christianity, as they were no longer accepted in their community. Converts had their food, surnames, and lifestyles altered to reflect their new faith. The Kunkalim Revolt. On July 15, 1583, the first major revolt in Goa took place when the Kunkokas of Kunkalim, enraged by the destruction of temples, desecration of deities, and forced conversions, killed 5 Portuguese missionaries. The villagers threw their bodies into a well in defiance of the missionaries' attempts to build a church in their village. The first martyrs. In an act of deceit, the Portuguese, in order to take revenge for the Kunkalim revolt, invited the village leaders, Gayoncas, to hold parleys with them at the fort at Asolna. 15 out of 16 Gayoncas who attended the meeting after being guaranteed a safe return passage, were brutally massacred in the fort, with only one of them escaping by jumping in the river Sal. These Gayoncas of Kunkalim were the first martyrs. Revolt of the Marathas. In 1666, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj attempted to capture the Antraz Mahal, Ponda, from the Adilshah of Bijapur, but Portuguese military aid to Adilshah thwarted his effort. However, in 1675, Shivaji's forces successfully captured Ponda, integrating it into the Maratha Swarajya. Battle of Pharmagudi. In November 1683, Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj captured Ponda Mahal, planted the Maratha flag, and named the area Pharmagudi. He also built Mudangad Fort. After his death in 1689, Ponda came under various rulers, eventually falling to the Soundakas in 1706. Deceitful Portuguese. In January 1763, the Soundakas sought Portuguese asylum after Missor's Hyder Ali attacked their kingdom. In return, they surrendered several territories, including Ponda Mahal, which the Portuguese fully controlled by 1764. Pinto's Revolt. Despite their dedication, Fr. Couto and Fr. Gonçalves faced prejudice and were denied top positions due to their skin color. Disillusioned, they plotted to overthrow Portuguese rule and establish a republic in Goa. The conspiracy was foiled, and around 47 priests and officers were executed by the Portuguese. Raines Revolts. The Rains, a brave Kshatriya clan from Satri, rose in rebellion at least 14 times, fighting for the autonomy of their region and addressing socio-economic issues. Their final revolt took place in 1912 in Kusk village, Kanakona, as they continued to resist outside control and assert their rights. Prince amongst intellectuals. Dr. Francisco Luis Gomes, a proud descendant of a civilization that produced the Mahabharata and chess, was a prominent Goan legislator and early supporter of India's independence. His political knowledge and influence helped shape the political consciousness of the Goan people. He also spoke out against the slavery in African colonies, advocating for justice and freedom. Tilak of Goa. In 1900, Luís de Menezes Braganza founded O Heraldo, Goa's first Portuguese daily, using its columns to criticize reactionary ideas with wit and satire. He promoted the ideals of a secular republic and, through his writings in Prakasha, encouraged Goan intellectuals to break free from mental slavery and fight for liberty and self-determination. Father of Goan nationalism. Dr. T.B. Cunha led Goa's first independence movement and, in 1928, helped form the Goa Congress Committee. He worked to integrate Goa into the larger Indian freedom struggle, uniting various freedom groups. Through his writings, including his journal Free Goa and the influential essay Denationalization of Goans, he inspired a strong desire for freedom among Goans. The Acto Colonial. The Colonial Act of 1930 made Goa an overseas province of Portugal, denying it self-determination and autonomy. The promises of provincial autonomy and secularism made during the Republican phase were soon forgotten, leaving Goans without the rights they were promised. Beginning of the end. In May 1926, a military coup in Republican Portugal brought General Antonio de Fragoso Carmona to power as president. By 1932, Antonio Oliveira de Salazar became prime minister, establishing a fascist regime. This marked the beginning of Goa's final phase under Portuguese colonial rule. Salazar's dictatorship. The Salazarist dictatorship in Portugal restricted press freedom and civil liberties, censoring speech, assembly, and even wedding cards. Criticism of the regime was banned, and political associations were forbidden. Civil disobedience movement. On June 18, 1946, Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia and Dr. Julio Menezes defied the Portuguese ban and held a public gathering in Margao. Lohia's call for Goa's independence sparked the first non-violent civil disobedience movement against Portuguese rule. National Congress Goa. Inspired by the civil disobedience movement, Goa nationalists united to form the National Congress Goa on August 17, 1946, during a historic meeting at Londa. This brought together various political groups and activists in a unified effort to fight for Goa's independence. A free India. Despite India's independence in 1947, Goa remained under Portuguese rule. Many patriots sacrificed their lives for freedom, while others were imprisoned in Portugal, Angola, and Cabo Verde, enduring brutal torture. The arrest of key leaders in 1946–47 temporarily slowed the momentum of the independence movement in Goa. The other path. Goa's freedom struggle had two main paths: the Gandhian approach, led by figures like Dr. Lohia and Kakadka, advocating non-violence, and the armed struggle, supported by groups like the Azad Gamantak Dal and Goa Liberation Army, seeking direct action against Portuguese rule. Fazenda attack. The Azad Gamantak Dal's first action was the attack on the Revenue Office at Mapusa in June 1947, led by militants like Vishwanath Lawand, Prabhakar Sinari, and Narayan Hari Naik. In December 1947, several of these freedom fighters were sentenced to 28 years of hard labor and deported to Angola by the Portuguese military tribunal. The diplomatic struggle. Jawaharlal Nehru's diplomatic efforts to negotiate Goa's freedom with Salazar's Portugal failed, leading India to withdraw its legation in Lisbon in 1953. The Goa issue became increasingly urgent as Salazar's refusal to negotiate angered Goan freedom fighters. Panchashil Doctrine. Nehru's foreign policy was based on the Panchashil Doctrine, which emphasized peaceful coexistence, non-aggression, and resolving disputes through dialogue. However, due to Portugal's NATO connections, India faced a significant challenge in liberating Goa without resorting to military force. The Satyagraha movement. The freedom movement in Goa, inspired by Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, gained momentum with several satyagrahas at Goa's borders between 1954 and 1955. The liberation of Dadra and Nagar Haveli on August 2, 1954, further energized the movement, fueling the fight for Goa's independence. The brutality. To suppress the freedom movement, the Portuguese brutally massacred unarmed satyagrahis at Goa's borders, especially in Tiracol and Patradevi. The 1955 satyagraha, marked by these atrocities, gained international attention, leading the government of India to impose a ban on satyagrahas in Goa, Daman, and Diu. United Nations. As the Goa impasse continued, India brought the issue to the United Nations, arguing that Goa was a clear case of colonialism. India received strong support from the Soviet Union, other communist nations, and freedom-loving countries in Africa and West Asia. V. K. Menon. V. Krishna Menon, India's permanent representative to the United Nations in 1957, argued that Goa should be addressed as a colonial issue, not in isolation. He emphasized India's commitment to pursuing Goa's liberation through legitimate means and patiently awaited the right moment for action, avoiding any improper methods. The trigger. On November 24, 1961, the Portuguese attacked the Indian passenger ship Sabarmati near Anjadiv Island, injuring passengers, followed by the shooting of a fishing boat the next day, which killed a local fisherman. These incidents ignited widespread outrage in India, with calls for military action against the Portuguese. The plan. On December 10, 1961, Prime Minister Nehru declared that Portuguese sovereignty over Goa was unsustainable. This led to an emergency meeting with military commanders, resulting in the planning of Operation Vijay, a joint armed forces operation to liberate Goa. Operation Vijay. Operation Vijay was launched by the Indian Armed Forces on December 18, 1961, to liberate Goa from Portuguese control. A small force simulated a larger brigade entering from the south to distract Portuguese troops, while the main thrust came from the east. The operation was completed swiftly to minimize destruction and avoid interference from the United Nations of Freedom. Operation Vijay, lasting over 36 hours, involved air, sea, and land strikes, leading to a decisive victory for India and ending 451 years of Portuguese rule in Goa. Goa was initially placed under military administration, with K.P. Kandith as the military governor. On June 8, 1962, military rule was replaced by a civilian government. Historic opinion poll. The Goa opinion poll, held on January 16, 1967, gave the people of Goa a choice between remaining a separate territory of India or merging with Maharashtra. The majority voted against the merger, and Goa remained a union territory. Konkani. On February 26, 1975, the Kendra Sahitya Akademi recognized Konkani, written in the Devanagari script, as an independent language. This recognition paved the way for Konkani's inclusion in the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution, making it one of India's official languages. Konkani Prajecho Avaz. In 1986, Goa witnessed the violent Konkani Prajecho Avaz, Voice of the Konkani People, protest, where 7 pro-Konkani activists were killed and many others injured. The movement ended with the introduction of the Goa, Daman, and Diu official language bill in the Legislative Assembly, leading to the official recognition of Konkani as Goa's official language. The statehood. On May 30, 1987, Goa became a state of India, with Konkani declared its sole official language. The Goa, Daman, and Diu official language bill of 1986 made Konkani the official language of Goa, while also allowing Marathi and Gujarati for Daman and Diu.